I am Logie Govender from Old Mutual Corporate Consulting, and I welcome you to the ISASA Retirement Webinar. Dave Crawford is a certified financial planner professional and will provide insights into the psychology of retirement. Over to you, Dave.
Hi there. We're here to talk about retirement and the aspect that is least covered prior to getting there, and that is the psychological part of it. Most people think the hard part about retirement is the money, and for many it is, but the adjusting, getting your mind right, that's huge. And so the question is whether you see it as the beginning or the end, sunrise or sunset. And that's the key decision that will determine the quality of the rest of your life in retirement. When you look at retirement, the issue we are talking about is pursuing successful retirement, not sitting around in a chair drinking Coke and watching television. I mean, that may be successful for some people, but for most it isn't. There's a whole range of things. And if you look at the camels on the right, your eye is drawn to them, but in fact those are not camels, those are shadows. What look like little white pigs are in fact the real camels. And retirement, I think one can say with a lot of confidence, is not what you expect, okay? And I found this quote from James Michener. It was in a book called Caravans, and it said, "We are never prepared for what we expect." And beware of that, because that's what causes a tremendous amount of uncertainty, unhappiness with people, is expecting that retirement's just going to slot into place, everything's going to be fine. For many of us, starting a new job was not comfortable, and this is starting a new job and a new life. And one of the things that I believe is most important that you should get right in your mind is what you expect from your retirement. I like making lists, and it's not a bad idea to make lists. You can always shape the list up later. You can knock edges off it. You can cross some of the things out. But go in confident that you've got something, that you've got a clear idea, and allow circumstances to help you adapt to it. Here's some ideas for your bucket list. See these two old geezers racing around the circuit in the sidecar? And then here's rodeo riding, breaking horses. These are things, as you get older, you might want to try. I got some more. Skydiving, that's a nice one. There's a nice, safe way of doing that. You can get strapped onto the front of somebody who really does know what they're doing. It's a little bit hairy, but it's fun. And then playing in a seniors rock band. And it's amazing how many there are of these and how people groove with getting back to guitars and so on. I'm actually learning to play the guitar because I also want to be able to stand there, not quite looking like Eric Clapton, but trying. Okay? You can travel to exotic places. You've got to be careful now with COVID, patently, and you've also got to look at what you can afford. Because it's expensive business, and travel is not always that comfortable. We've got here Machu Picchu, I think is how you pronounce it, in Peru, as far as I know. Never been there myself, but certainly it's a time to collect those experiences, COVID permitting. Perhaps this is the time you want to use to write your book. Okay? It's much, much harder than you think, but I have a collection of photograph albums that my parents left me, and their grandparents left them. And they've all got comments like Joe and Pete at the sea or at the house. And I think, why couldn't they have written a story for me so that I could understand and share in some of this? So it's a wonderful thought that my daughter's mother-in-law is writing a book to try and fit all their photographs while she can still remember them. She's in her 70s, so she better get cracking. But you're giving your children, your family, your grandchildren a gift that you will never be able to understand how much it means to them unless you've had the same problem that I had, where you've got hundreds of pictures and you don't know what to do with them. Do we throw them away? Dare we throw them away? So it's not easy. And of course, the greatest gift of all, time with your grandchildren. And the reason it's the greatest gift, time with your grandchildren, is that your children take them home when you've had enough. Okay? And this is what rejuvenates you. And it's just wonderful. And it's your chance to pass on some of the wisdom about some of the bumps and some of the exhilaration that you've had in your life. Exploring other interests, quite interesting. Mr. Savin here was a French astronaut, and he got talked into sailing across the Atlantic in what he called a barrel, with about half a ton of pâté de foie and some very, very good champagne. Apparently he didn't drink the champagne because the movement of the sea made him seasick. But he did that successfully, and he came out of it looking fine. And what an experience to tell about, show pictures of. You must remember that retirement is a major life transition. When businesses take over other businesses, they talk about transition management, and they pay a fortune to all sorts of people to help get it done. But unfortunately, in your life, you've got to go through a transition that is every bit as frightening. And you have only yourself and the people around you, the people that you trust, you love, your children, your spouse, all the rest, to do it with. So it's very much an internal, personal thing. The normal change symptoms is pretty similar to what happens when there's a death in the family. You start with denial. Goodness me. And I hear a lot of retired people say, I'm not having any trouble at all. In fact, I'm so busy in retirement. I don't know how I had time to go to work. With the library and I met somebody yesterday who's with Gideon's, that sort of thing, okay? This is often followed by depression and quite a lot of anger. And the anger is directed generally at the world. I mean, I worked all this time and I don't get recognition and what have you. And gradually you do come to acceptance. But the trick is to plan, to have your expectations reasonably well set out so that you're working towards something rather than waiting for something to happen. Okay. Losses in retirement are important to grasp. And the first patently is your salary. If you're retiring from an employer who paid you a salary, with the loss of that income, loss of the job, go the associated issues, which are your purpose, direction, in many cases identity, and tied to that is status. Okay? And I met somebody the other night at Wanderers, was it Wanderers? Yeah, who said to me 9 times in the course of about a 10-minute conversation that he was a chartered accountant. So clearly his status was terribly tied up and he didn't want anybody to miss it. It's going to go. Let it go. If you want to own it, you must let it go. Working for a large company, you will find that you'll miss the structure, the work structure. You will also miss the social structure. And I'm not talking about social clubs. I'm talking about the person you sit down to have coffee with in the morning, who you may choose to complain about about what goes on. That's gone. And sadly, your youth is gone. I don't know if you realize that by now. You may have a few wrinkles that you didn't believe people knew would have wrinkles. And of course your health, which I can't talk about because that's so intensely personal and it affects us all in such different ways. Now, one of the causes of stress for people who do retire is their loss of access to information. And anybody who works in a modern employer where there's a fairly high degree of technical work, computers, science, what have you, chemistry and so on, they are accustomed to having free access, and financial, they are accustomed to having free access to almost any information they want. It's paid for and it's there. Once you're out of the loop, you might get 3 months on the system, but the chances are it will eventually disappear. So one of the things you want to do is to figure out a support system that'll keep you getting that information in a way you can afford and in a way you can trust, because there's no doubt that Wikipedia needs to be checked. Okay, it's not perfect. Once you've got something like that in mind, you will gain a sense of control again. Now, it's important that we look at the psychological risks of retirement. And the risk revolves around having unsuccessful retirement. And that comes in many ways from having a strong sense that you've lost your meaning. That causes you to lose confidence. It also damages relationships, which leads in many ways to your feeling old before you are, premature aging, taking us back to depression, which many more people suffer from than are prepared to admit. And that often causes psychosomatic illness and, of course, ultimately death, because we can't choose. That's what's going to happen. It's also referred to as circling the drain. Okay? So your psychological posture is incredibly important in retirement. When we look at accommodation, I thought this might appeal to you, the idea of a houseboat on I think that's the Mississippi. Is it? I can't see the flag very clearly. But another, perhaps something you might enjoy this is what they call a trailer park in America. And Jerry Springer's people all stay in places like this. I'm fascinated by it because I don't think you could blow your nose without everybody else in the whole structure knowing exactly what you're doing, which might lead to some amusing and interesting circumstances. Okay. One of the very important issues about houses, the house you live in, or the home you live in, is that people often put a huge amount of money in. But what they need to understand is that your home is not an asset. It's not an income-producing asset, unless you want to go into B&Bs. And B&Bs are, that's kind of moving back to slavery, So you want to be very careful of that. And downsizing, although everybody loves to make a fuss about it, watch out for it. It's often disappointing. You sell your house and you buy something smaller and you have to take out a bond because it's more expensive. Because downsizing is where everything is going, okay? And when you get to retirement, the last thing on earth you want to do is to take money out of your pension resources and use that, put that extra in to purchase a bigger or a better or snazzier house. We can get accustomed to quite a lot, and a minimalist existence is actually very, very enjoyable, or working towards it, certainly. There are a number of types of property ownership that you can move into in the dwellings for older people. I hate talking about elderly people. It kind of connotes people who are older than I am. Okay, you've got sectional title, which I think most of us are familiar with. Shared ownership of a group of homes. Cluster homes are where you own your own home within a group of homes that are on a common property where they share things like the cost of the wall, gardening, probably water for the garden, things like that, and possibly upkeep of the pool. Okay. Then the new one is life rights, where you move into a accommodation which you either purchase outright, or you can now, I see some of the homes are starting to let people rent them, but you stay there for as long as you live. You and hopefully your spouse live. In the event of your death, the life right then reverts to the people who own the property, and they on-sell it to somebody else again at a revised price, which is part of their funding, part of their funding model, part of the way they earn their income. There is rental and life rights are starting to get closer together. But please, if you go to life rights, go and have a lawyer look at the contract that you sign, because there are a few stories, horror stories coming out of these things where everything looks too good, too easy, and you have a problem. Okay, when you think of changing to a retirement home, there are a couple of things you want to pay attention to. And the first is the nature of ownership, which really relates to the first slide. The second, patently, obviously, is the cost. The third is, how much is this going to cost you every month? What are your levies going to be, etc.? And before you move, have a look at the accounts of a complex, because if the reserves are low and if the maintenance hasn't been done, you may discover you have to pay a lot of money in special levies. Do you want to have frail care? That's a consideration. Do you want catering? A number of these places cater for you. And some people I know have moved into these places and are absolutely hating them because they can't even get up and boil their own egg. All they're allowed to do is make coffee, which is a bit awkward. There was a riot at one of the homes where they were supposed to make their coffee, told they had to boil their water in a microwave. And that was just a bridge too far for some of the wives. And of course it's been resolved, but if you have a look at that first, that's a useful one to get under your belt. Supervision and security are particularly important. Security, yes, because you don't want your belongings stolen. But the idea of supervision, where you live in a facility, and let's assume you are now on your own. What happens if you, for example, fall and hurt yourself and you can't get up? How long will it take the system to discover that you're in difficulty? And that is something you really want to pay attention to, because that may well be the difference between life and death. There is no question that marital relations do change, and you need to be sensitive to it, both sides, and really give it lots of thought. Okay, and presumably by this time you've probably learnt a bit about giving each other lots of room, but there are, it's not the perfectly smooth road which just happens. Emotional health is absolutely crucial. And the idea of resolving relationships, many relationships have the odd little, they say in Afrikaans so beautifully, haakplek. And maybe you want to talk those through, because when you are confined to a fairly small space by yourselves, although I imagine most of us have had quite a lot of experience of that with COVID, learning how to get on or off each other's nerves, but still. The American Association of Retired Persons believe we shouldn't move at too old an age, because that hastens our terminal date. Remember, if you move, you're going to have to make friends in a new place. For your emotional health, you do need to consider your spiritual needs. I can't even comment on that. And clearly your hobbies and pastimes are something you want to pay attention to. Now, a lot of people who've had high-pressure jobs don't have much by way of hobbies. So it's something to pay attention to. And there's lots of stuff available for retired and older people, not least of which is the University of the Third Age. I come back to this issue of being in a confined space. You need a kind of code, an understanding between you. For example, if Western Province are playing in my house, then we all sit down to watch Western Province, okay? That's rugby I'm talking about. If it's a toss-up between rugby and tennis, I fold my hands politely, open a beer, and I watch tennis, okay? So we've organized our priorities. But if you've got to fight all of these battles again and again, you're just adding to a load that you don't really want to have to deal with. Your health patently is crucial, and we're also conscious of it. Perhaps I am teaching my grandmother to suck eggs here, but before you start anything strenuous, talk to your GP, start slowly, be careful, and do it regularly. And I've just listed a few of the things. Walking, yoga has given a lot of people, all of this, given a lot of people tremendous amount of confidence in their bodies, which is such a vital part of getting old. Because one of the issues, and I'm sure some of you may even have experienced it slightly, those of you who are very close to retirement, is this either the fear that your body will let you down in some small way, or the fact that it might have, and it's given you a little bit of a fright. Swimming, wonderful sport. Dancing, go to Arthur Murray, and you will see that many of the people who attend have got grey hair and are lapping it up, because that's where you get to waltz again, foxtrot, and dances that you hadn't even thought about, even long arm, and so on. And the gym, of course, you manage yourself. You do the amount you want to do, you do it the way you want to do it, and so on. And I think some of the gyms are actually getting around to giving discounted memberships to older people. Those of you on Discovery, obviously, it's not such a big problem, because they encourage attendance at gyms. The mind is like this guy's muscles. Use it or lose it. This gentleman was a postman in America, and he retired early, and he didn't have anything to do, and he didn't have much money, and his wife persuaded him, because he was solidly built, that he should attend to masters bodybuilding competitions, which he did. And I spoke to him on the phone after discovering him, and it turns out he turned himself into a dollar millionaire with sponsorships, and thousands of people send him money. Most of the people who send him money are ladies, and they send him They sent him $5. Is this the $5? But certainly $10 and $20 bills with their name and phone number written in Koki on both sides of that. And when I asked him how he coped with that, he said, no, his wife kept a register and wrote and thanked every one of them and said, my husband and I thank you. Okay. So the two of them used their minds, and they went from what looked like a situation where they were going to be pretty, without much joy, into one that has just been wonderful for them. There is no cure for boredom, no medical cure for boredom. And you go into, and most doctors give a discount on 1 day a week in their surgeries. And a lot of people go there because of the discount and a chance to talk to the doctor. My doctor has a chest timer on his desk. You know, where you hit the bell and the person's got time for the next one. And he times people who go there who don't have a physical problem, but who just want to talk to him. Okay. Back to the psychological risk again. Now we look at the pattern of successful aging. The first is financial clarity. Whether you have a little bit too little or too much or whatever, that's fine. As long as you understand it and you know where you stand, because that gives you a new purpose. If you have to go out and do something to earn a bit of money, that's a purpose. If you know you have enough and you can afford to take part in charitable activities without fear, that's a new purpose. That new purpose creates a new career. That new career will lead you to new relationships. Those new relationships will improve your self-esteem, particularly if the people you're dealing with are a lot younger than you. If you find you can still get on with them, it's just amazing what it does. I don't know if any of you have seen a film called The Intern with Robert De Niro, but I think that gives it in such a beautiful way. When your self-esteem is enhanced, it improves your functional competence as a human being, and that gives you optimism, which is hope. And hope is what we live for. And then that's where people start to give back in a big way. Of course, at the end of the road, we are going to pass on, and there's nothing much we can do about it, but we can have a really good journey to get there. And these are some of the pointers. Okay. Prepare yourself for retirement. You decide the things you want to do, plan your actions, and keep track. Even if you're going to go down to the supermarket or go shopping or whatever you're going to do, if you track every day, you do not have a sense that you've lost time, which so many people have. Okay? Now, I got to it through a bit of paranoia because when I was a young child, I used to worry. I read a lot of detective stories, Enid Blyton kind of detective stories. And I would always wonder, what would I do if the police arrived one day and said, where were you at 5 o'clock on the 17th of August, 1969, okay? How do I answer that? I mean, nobody knows. But if you have a diary and you say, we did these various things that day, you don't have to embellish them, just what did we do? It means that your memories will come back more easily. And you don't have to say, scratch your head and think, hang on, was it Thursday or was it Tuesday or was it Monday? Okay? And then I was sent this by some retirees. I think this is taken in Germany by the look of it. I don't know. But the message I got was that even if you haven't got oodles of wealth, there are still things you can do in your retirement that are enjoyable, that do not cost an arm and a leg, that you can have fun with. You can sit in the warm water, have a toot, and talk to people. Because you see, those of us with grey hair, it's just our bodies. We're all still 17, 18, 19 inside. And we need to understand and feel we can do that. We mustn't be old too soon. And things happen. You know, you've had them. Disappointments, wonderful things. But I think these are very important words. Alan Barton wrote them. John Lennon put them into his song called, I think it was Beautiful Boy, Darling Boy, or Darling Boy, Beautiful Boy, about his son, Sean. Yeah, okay. And life is what happens while you're making other plans. So things will happen. But if you have the resilience, the belief that you are living a life that is full, you cope with this sort of thing so much more easily. Thank you.